Let's jump right in. We're looking at the greatest heist that never happened, uncovering a literally thousand-year-old myth. In this explainer, we're diving into a thrilling story that has captivated millions. We're talking disguise, secret underground tunnels, and divine intervention. But more importantly, we're going to see exactly why we need to critically examine the stories we've been fed since childhood. So to really understand the stakes here, we first need to compare modern security with historical reverence. Think about the security surrounding world leaders today, like the presidents of the US or China. It's massive, right? But ultimately, these leaders are mortal, and that security, it's temporary. Now compare that to the Prophet Muhammad's resting place, the Rawza in Medina. It is literally one of the highest security zones on the planet. It's an eternal, multi-layered defense system. We're talking a massive control room, thousands of guards spread across 200 gates, and completely restricted airspace. I mean, nothing but birds are allowed to fly over the structure. And get this, the security doesn't just stop at the surface or the sky. Modern defense measures go deep underground. The Saudi military has actually installed highly sensitive seismic radars right beneath the earth in Medina. If even the slightest, tiniest unnatural tremor is detected down there, it alerts the military command instantly. It's primed to trigger a nationwide emergency in a matter of moments. Basically, by all modern standards, it is impossible to penetrate. But let's travel back 1,000 years. The world was, well, a very different place. The once great opposite caliphate had completely fractured into smaller, fighting factions. Muslims were deeply divided and vulnerable. Even territories like Palestine had slipped from their control. And it was during this exact moment of unprecedented weakness that a sinister plot was born, far away, in a small village in Spain. Two men devised a plan that no enemy had ever even dared to attempt. They were going to infiltrate Medina and steal the resting body of the prophet. According to the historical myth, these two guys were incredibly meticulous. It's almost like a medieval heist movie. Step 1. They completely changed their appearance, growing these long beards and dressing like devout Muslims just to blend in. Step 2. They managed to rent a house incredibly close to the Rawza. Step 3. While they played the part of pious worshippers during the day, at night they were digging a secret tunnel straight from their house toward the tomb. And finally, Step 4. To avoid any suspicion, they would pack the excavated dirt into bags and quietly, just scatter it in a nearby graveyard during the day. And the whole city was completely fooled. So as this tunnel creeps closer and closer to its target, the myth reaches its emotional climax, miles and miles away in Damascus. The story claims that Sultan Nuruddin Zengi, this really powerful Muslim ruler, suddenly had a desperate, shocking vision in his sleep. In his dream, he was visited and given a direct plea for help. "O Nuruddin, save me from these two men." The Sultan wakes up in a total panic, completely bewildered by what he just saw. But how do you think the Sultan reacted? Well, the text claims he actually ignored the vision the first time, figuring it was just, a trick of the mind. He goes back to sleep, only to have the exact same dream again. And he ignores it a second time. But on the third night, the dream returns, and this time he's shown the exact faces of the two culprits. Realizing the grave and immediate danger unfolding over in Medina, the Sultan finally stops ignoring the warnings and mobilizes his forces immediately. What follows is honestly an incredible piece of medieval detective work. The Sultan rushes all the way from Damascus to Medina at full speed. But he doesn't just start knocking down doors. Instead, he sets this brilliant trap. He announces a massive, mandatory feast for every single citizen in the city. As this massive banquet takes place, the Sultan personally hands out gifts to the attendees. Why? Because it gives him the perfect excuse to look deeply into the face of every single man in Medina. He is desperately searching for the two faces he saw in his dream. After the feast wraps up, the Sultan still hasn't found his targets. He demands to know if absolutely everyone attended. The locals mention, "Oh wait, there are these two men, strangers from afar who are incredibly pious and constantly praying, who stayed behind in their home." The suspense really peaks here. The Sultan marches over to their house. He recognizes them instantly from his dream. He tears the place apart, and when he pulls back a carpet on the floor, boom, he discovers the dark tunnel leading directly toward the Rawza. The myth concludes with the Sultan dragging the men out and publicly executing them, saving the day. It's a flawless, heroic narrative, right? Well, here is where our analysis completely flips the script. It is an amazing story. We've heard it from relatives, we've seen it online, it's been passed down for generations. But there is one massive problem with the whole shebang. Despite being told as historical fact, the source evidence proves this story is an absolute fabrication. It never happened. Zero underground thieves, no magical dreams, and no dramatic rescue by the Sultan. To understand why, we have to critically examine the sources. Let's look at the book by al-Samudi. This is the sole origin of the heist story. He wrote this more than 300 years after Sultan Nuruddin actually died. And his source? Anonymous hearsay. He literally just wrote that he heard it from someone without ever naming who or when. Compare that to the authoritative historical record by Imam Ibn al-Athir. That is a massive 10-volume history written right around the time the Sultan actually lived. When you lay it out, the historical gap is just glaring. We have the Sultan's life, followed immediately by Ibn al-Athir documenting it meticulously. Then, absolute silence on this supposed greatest heist in history. 3 entire centuries pass before al-Samudi decides to write down this dramatic hearsay rumor. It simply defies all historical logic that such a monumental event would be completely ignored by the people who actually lived through that era. And just how detailed was that contemporary historian Ibn al-Athir? Well, according to the source material, his 10-volume history documents the smallest, most mundane details of the Sultan's life. I mean, it describes how the Sultan sat, what his physical appearance was, and even goes so far as to record exactly how many pigeons the Sultan owned. Seriously. Yet in all of these incredibly meticulous pages, there is zero mention of a miraculous tunnel heist in Medina. It's completely impossible that an author who remembers to count the Sultan's pigeons would somehow just forget to mention the Sultan saving the Prophet's resting place? Plus, beyond the missing history, there's a really massive theological flaw in the myth. The Quran explicitly dictates that the Prophet is under absolute divine protection. What that means is that human intervention, even from a super powerful Sultan, was never required in the first place. The myth inadvertently suggests a vulnerability that goes against the very theological foundations it's trying to celebrate. As we wrap up this explainer, we kind of have to look in the mirror. The source leaves us with a really powerful realization. We're living in an era of AI-generated content, rapid-fire videos, and endless social media feeds. If a fabricated, anonymous rumor written down 500 years ago in a single book can truck millions of people, and even respected scholars for centuries, how critically are we evaluating the media we consume today? If history can be so easily rewritten by just a good story, what makes you think that viral post you saw this morning is true? So the next time you hear a story that sounds just a little too perfect, will you take the time to verify it?